Do you know what the most Googled question is about data management? Well, that's what we're going to explore this week on the Data Radio Show. Hello there, and welcome to the Data Radio Show. I'm your host, Paul, and this week, we're kind of exploring Google Answers. One in particular, the most Googled question about data management, which is, what is data management, and how does it differ from, say, IT infrastructure? So, with the help of Notebook Alien, we've put together a little bit of a starter guide that goes for about 20 minutes that explains that kind of stuff to you. So hopefully, you can walk away from this with a little bit more of a base understanding if you don't already have one. But before we get into that, don't forget to hit that like button on the video, or share the video, or subscribe to the channel to be getting yourself some updates. Alright, let's jump over to that Notebook Alien recording and have a listen in on what they say about data infrastructure versus IT infrastructure.
Okay, have you ever been looking for a really important file and it's buried in this huge messy folder on your computer?
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
It's kind of like that for businesses today with all the data they're creating.
Yeah.
You know, every time someone buys something online or a sensor on a machine sends a reading or someone visits a website, it just keeps piling up.
Yeah, and trying to figure out how companies can actually make sense of all that data and how you as a listener can use those lessons. Well, it can feel pretty overwhelming, right?
Yeah, totally.
We're drowning in data these days, and if you don't have a good system in place, it just becomes a big mess.
Right. It's like you could have a goldmine of information, but you can't even see it because it's so disorganized.
Exactly, and that's where this idea of data infrastructure comes in.
Data infrastructure.
Yeah, it's basically the system that helps businesses collect, organize, and actually use all that information.
So it's like the foundation for making data valuable.
It's exactly. And for this deep dive, we've been looking at a bunch of different sources, some that give a high-level overview and others that get into the nitty-gritty of the tech.
And our mission is to give you a clear understanding of what data infrastructure is, why it matters, and some key things to keep in mind.
Yeah, we want to break it down and show you why it's so important for any company that wants to use data effectively.
Okay, so let's get into it. What exactly is data infrastructure?
It's kind of a broad term, but basically it's all the digital resources a company uses to manage its data.
Okay, so that includes
Everything, the hardware, the software, the networks, and the processes.
So from the moment data is collected.
Yep, to how it's stored, organized, cleaned up, and then finally analyzed so people can make decisions.
And we read this in one of the sources. It's like the digital infrastructure that promotes data sharing and consumption.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's about making data flow and be available to the people who need it.
I like that it's more dynamic than just picturing a bunch of servers in a basement somewhere.
Exactly, and it's not just about having the data. It's about making sure it can be used effectively across the whole organization.
Right, so you could have a ton of data, but if it's not accessible or organized, it's basically useless.
Yeah, one of the sources compared it to the foundation of a skyscraper.
Oh, okay.
If the foundation is weak, the whole building is at risk.
Makes sense. So a strong data infrastructure is kind of like a foundation for any company that wants to be data-driven.
Exactly. And another source made an analogy to the plumbing system in a building.
The plumbing system.
Yeah, think about it. The pipes carry water to all the different parts of the building where it's needed.
Okay, so in this case, the data is the water and the data infrastructure is the pipes.
Exactly. It's the unseen network that makes sure the data flows smoothly and reliably to everyone who needs it.
So the purpose of this data plumbing system is to handle all the massive amounts of data companies are generating.
That's a big part of it, but it's also about making sure the data is high quality.
Oh, right. So it's not just about quantity, it's about quality too.
Exactly. And it needs to be easily accessible to the right people.
And it has to be able to power all sorts of activities like reports, AI, and machine learning, even complying with privacy regulations.
Yeah, it's about managing the scale of data, ensuring its quality and accessibility, and supporting all sorts of data-driven initiatives across the whole company.
From everyday tasks to long-term planning.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are the actual pieces of this system?
Well, let's start with data storage solutions. This is where the data actually lives, and there are a bunch of different options.
Like what?
Well, for data that fits into tables like customer information or sales records, you have relational databases.
Relational databases?
Yeah, think of them like really organized filing cabinets, and some popular ones are MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Oracle.
Okay, so those are good for structured data.
Right, and then you have NoSQL databases, which are better for data that's less structured or changes quickly.
Like social media posts or sensor readings.
Exactly, they're more flexible, and some popular options are MongoDB Cassandra and Couchbase.
So they're more like adaptable storage containers.
Right. And then for storing data that's specifically used for
Yeah.
analysis, there are data warehouses.
Data warehouses?
Yeah, these are built for running queries and generating reports quickly. And some well-known ones are Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, and Snowflake.
Okay, and what about just storing huge amounts of raw data?
That's where data lakes come in. They're often built on object storage like Amazon S3, Google Cloud Storage, or Azure Blob Storage.
So it's like a giant lake where all sorts of data can flow in.
Exactly. And object storage itself is like a massive warehouse where you can just dump all sorts of data without having to organize it too much.
Wow, that's a lot of different ways to store data.
Yeah. And each one has its own pros and cons depending on the type of data and what you need to do with it.
So once the data is stored, how do we actually work with it?
That's where data processing frameworks come in. They let you manipulate, clean, transform, and analyze the data.
So they're like the tools in our data workshop.
Exactly. One of the key frameworks is Apache Hadoop, which is great for processing huge data sets across many computers.
It's like a team of computers working together.
Right. It includes HDFS for distributing the data across those computers and MapReduce and Yarn for the actual processing.
Okay, and what about Apache Spark?
Spark is known for its speed. It's really good at complex analytics because it keeps the data in memory.
So it's like having a super fast workbench.
Exactly. And for real-time data streams like website activity or sensor readings, there's Apache Flink.
Okay, so that's for data that's constantly flowing.
Right. And then to manage all the different tasks involved in data processing, you have tools like Apache Kafka for data streaming and Apache Airflow for orchestrating workflows.
So Kafka is like the conveyor belt moving the data along, and Airflow is the conductor, making sure everything happens in the right order.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got our storage and our processing. What else do we need?
Data integration and management tools. These help bring data together from all those different sources and make sure it's consistent, accurate, and reliable.
So they're like the quality control team.
Yeah, one important category is ETL tools, which stand for Extract Transform Load.
Extract transform.
Yeah, they basically pull data from different systems, clean it up, and load it into a target system like a data warehouse.
And our sources mentioned Talon Informatica Power Center and Microsoft SSIS as examples.
Right, those are some popular ones. And then there are data quality and governance solutions, which monitor and improve the accuracy and consistency of data.
So they make sure the data is actually good.
Exactly. And you also have master data management systems, which ensure everyone in the company is using the same consistent data for things like customers or products.
Okay, so no more arguing about whether it's John Smith or Jonathan Smith.
Right. And a tool like Apache NiFi is really useful for managing the flow of data between all these different systems.
So it's like the traffic cop directing the data where it needs to go.
Perfect analogy.
Okay, so we've covered the data storage, the processing, the integration. What about the more basic IT stuff?
Right. So underlying all this is the networking infrastructure.
The networking?
Yeah, the LANs, the WANs, the internet, the routers, the switches, the firewalls, all that stuff.
Okay, so that's how all these systems actually talk to each other.
Exactly. And then there's compute power, the actual processing capacity to run everything.
Which could be physical servers.
Yep, or virtual machines in the cloud, or even containers.
And of course, security is crucial.
Absolutely. You need firewalls, encryption, software, access controls, and auditing tools to protect sensitive data.
Makes sense. You don't want anyone sneaking into your data plumbing system.
Right. And then to keep an eye on everything, you have monitoring and management tools.
So you can see if there are any leaks or blockages in the pipes.
Exactly. Things like Prometheus, Grafana, Axle Data, and Datadog. They give you dashboards and alerts to help you manage the whole infrastructure.
So it's like having a control room for your data plumbing.
Exactly.
Okay. This is getting complex. Now, you mentioned different types of data infrastructure earlier. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. One way to categorize them is by how they're deployed and managed. So you have on-premises infrastructure, which means the company owns and manages all the hardware and software themselves.
So it's all in their own building.
Right. It gives them maximum control, but it also requires a big investment up front. And they're responsible for all the maintenance and upgrades.
So it's like owning your own house. You have total control, but you also have to do all the work.
Exactly. Then you have cloud-based infrastructure, which uses services from third-party providers like AWS, Azure, and GCP.
So it's like renting an apartment.
In a way, yeah, it's more scalable and flexible, and you often only pay for what you use, but you have less control over the underlying infrastructure.
Okay, and then there's hybrid infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a mix of on-premises and cloud, so companies can choose the best option for each workload based on things like security cost and performance.
So it's like owning a house, but renting out a room or two.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Okay, so those are the deployment models. What other ways can we categorize data infrastructure?
We can also look at the architecture. So traditional infrastructure is more siloed with separate servers for compute, storage, and networking.
Okay.
Then you have converged infrastructure, which packages those components together in a single unit.
So it's more integrated.
Right. And hyperconverged takes that integration even further by using software to tightly connect everything.
Okay, and what about edge infrastructure?
That's about processing data closer to where it's generated, like on factory floors or in vehicles.
So instead of sending all the data back to a central location, you process it right there on the edge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's becoming really important with the rise of IoT devices.
It's like having a mini data center right where the action is happening.
You got it.
Okay, so with all this complexity, why should a company even bother with building a good data infrastructure?
Oh, there are tons of benefits, like improved decision-making for starters.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you have a well-organized data infrastructure, business leaders and analysts can actually access the information they need to make informed decisions.
So no more flying blind.
Exactly. You're making strategic choices based on real data, not just gut feeling.
Which can be a huge advantage in today's market.
Absolutely. And it also leads to increased efficiency.
Efficiency.
Yeah, by automating things, streamlining workflows, and providing the right tools for analysis companies can save time and money.
So people can focus on more important tasks.
Exactly. And it also improves data governance.
Data governance.
Yeah, a good infrastructure helps you control data, quality, security, and compliance with regulations.
So you're reducing risks and making sure the data is reliable.
Right, and of course, security is a major benefit.
Security.
Yeah, a robust infrastructure protects your data from hackers and breaches.
And it helps you comply with all those privacy laws.
Exactly. And another key benefit is scalability.
Scalability.
Yeah, as your business grows and generates more data, your infrastructure needs to be able to handle it.
Without falling apart.
Right. A well-designed infrastructure can grow with you.
So you don't have to keep rebuilding it.
Exactly. And it can also give you a competitive advantage. If you can use your data to understand customers, spot trends, and optimize your operations, you'll be ahead of the game.
So data becomes a weapon.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also fuels innovation.
Innovation.
Yeah, you can use data to develop new products and services.
So it's not just about improving what you're already doing, it's about creating new things.
Right. And finally, it enhances collaboration.
Collaboration.
Yeah, by making data more accessible and shareable across the company.
So no more data silos.
Exactly.
It sounds like a strong data infrastructure is essential for any company that wants to thrive in the digital age.
I'd say it's mission critical.
Okay, so let's say a company is convinced they need to build or upgrade their data infrastructure. What are the steps involved?
Well, it starts with assessing business requirements.
So figuring out what they actually need?
Right. You need to understand their data sources, the volume and speed of data, their analytical needs, and their security and compliance requirements.
So it's like taking inventory of their data landscape?
Exactly. And then comes planning of strategy.
So making a plan.
Yeah. You choose the right technologies, design the architecture, define data governance policies, and create a roadmap for implementation.
Okay, so that's the blueprint.
Right. Then comes deployment and testing.
So putting the plan into action.
Yep, you install and configure everything, implement security measures, and test everything thoroughly.
To make sure it all works.
Exactly. And the final stage is maintenance and scalability.
So keeping the system running smoothly.
Right. You do regular updates, monitor performance, optimize things, and plan for future growth.
So it's an ongoing process.
Definitely.
Okay, now let's be realistic. Building this kind of system is going to come with challenges.
Oh, for sure.
What are some of the common ones?
Well, data quality is a big one.
Meaning bad data.
Yeah. Inconsistent, inaccurate, or incomplete data can really mess things up.
So garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And cost is another challenge.
Yeah, building and maintaining the stuff isn't cheap.
Right. And scalability is another one, making sure the system can handle more data as the company grows.
And security is always a concern.
Definitely, you need to stay ahead of the hackers and comply with all the regulations.
And what about finding people who actually know how to do all this?
Yeah. The skills gap is a real problem.
Yeah.
It can be tough to find and keep qualified people.
And integrating data from different systems can be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you have legacy systems that weren't designed to talk to each other.
And then there's the issue of performance, making sure the system can handle all the data and the analysis without slowing down.
Yeah, performance optimization is a constant battle.
So basically, there's a lot that can go wrong.
There are definitely challenges, but there are also solutions.
Okay, like what?
Well, to address data quality, you need strong data governance policies and procedures.
So rules and processes for managing data.
Exactly. And for cost, you can look at cloud-based solutions and focus on optimizing resource utilization.
So getting the most bang for your buck.
Right. And for scalability, you need to choose technologies that are designed to scale and do proactive capacity planning.
So anticipating future needs.
Exactly. And for security and compliance, you need strong security measures, regular audits, and you need to stay up to date on the latest regulations.
So it's a never-ending job.
Pretty much. And for the skills gap, you can invest in training your existing staff or partner with external experts.
And for integration challenges, you need a solid data integration strategy and the right tools.
Right. And for performance issues, you need constant monitoring, optimization, and tuning.
So it's all about being proactive and staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. One of the sources said that bad data quality can cost companies millions of dollars per year.
Millions. Wow, that's a big incentive to get it right.
It definitely highlights the importance of a solid data infrastructure.
Okay, now one of the sources compared data infrastructure to traditional IT infrastructure. Can you explain the difference?
Sure. So traditional IT infrastructure is more about the basic computing, networking, and storage resources that a company needs to run its everyday operations.
So things like email servers and business applications.
Exactly. The focus is on reliability, uptime, and security for those core systems.
Okay, and data infrastructure is different. How?
Data infrastructure is specifically about managing and leveraging data as a strategic asset.
So it's about getting value from the data.
Exactly. It's about the flow, storage, processing, analysis, and governance of data.
Okay, so they have different purposes and they probably use different tools too.
Right. Data infrastructure often uses cloud-native, distributed, and modular designs to handle huge amounts of data.
And traditional IT might be more centralized or on-premises.
Exactly. And the tools are different too. Data infrastructure uses things like data lakes, data warehouses, ETL tools, and big data processing frameworks.
While traditional IT uses servers, network devices, firewalls, operating systems, that kind of thing.
Right. And even the users are different data engineers.
Yeah.
Data scientists and business analysts use data infrastructure, while IT administrators and network engineers manage traditional IT.
And what about scale and flexibility?
Data infrastructure is built to handle massive amounts of data and changing needs. It often have real-time processing capabilities too.
So it's more dynamic and adaptable.
Exactly. The source used Snowflake and Apache Kafka as examples of data infrastructure components and Cisco routers and Windows servers as examples of traditional IT components.
So they're different layers of the technology stack.
Right. Data infrastructure is a specialized layer that's focused on getting the most out of a company's data.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, one of the sources mentioned global research data infrastructures. What are those?
Those are large-scale international projects that are building data infrastructure for scientific research.
So it's like building a data infrastructure for the whole world.
In a way, yeah. Organizations like the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures and the National Science Foundation in the U.S. are involved.
And the goal is to give researchers access to tons of data, powerful computing resources, and collaborative platforms.
Exactly. It's about breaking down barriers and accelerating scientific discovery.
So it's like creating a global data ecosystem for science.
Exactly. It shows how important data infrastructure is becoming in all sorts of fields, not just business.
It's really about unlocking the power of data for the benefit of everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so to wrap things up, it seems like a solid data infrastructure is essential for any organization that wants to be data-driven.
Absolutely. It's the foundation for everything else.
Without it, you're just drowning in data.
Exactly. A good data infrastructure allows you to collect, manage, analyze, and ultimately get value from your data.
So for all of you listening out there, think about the state of your own organization's data infrastructure.
Is it a strong foundation, or does it need some work?
Thinking that your data plumbing can make a big difference to your success.
Yeah. Is your data infrastructure helping you reach your full potential, or is it holding you back?
That's a great question to ask. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into data infrastructure.
We hope you learned something new.
We encourage you to think about what kind of data infrastructure would work best for your organization.
How can you assess your current infrastructure?
And what are the first steps you can take to modernize it?
Understanding data infrastructure is crucial in today's world.
So join us next time as we delve into T's next episode topic.
See that?
Bye.
Hey, thanks for checking out this week's Data Radio Show. Don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you can make sure you're kept up to date with all the great stuff that we've got coming out at the moment. And That's a whole range of different sort of products and topics and content pieces, so hopefully you find something useful there. If you haven't already, you can also sign up for the Data Pro newsletter, where each week you'll get something in your inbox on the latest changes that are happening within the data industry, or you could head over to our school classroom and sit there and chat with people who are actual experts and do some courses on some of the fundamentals of data management. Look, until next time, look after yourselves, be one with the force, live long, prosper, and I will catch you guys all later.